Now we're ready. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this regular call meeting of the Temple City Council to conduct a workshop. It's April 6, 2023. It is 10 minutes after 2. First item is public comments. Any citizens who desire to address the council on any matter that's listed on the workshop agenda may do so. We have none that have signed up. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is to discuss as may be needed any regular meeting agenda items for the meeting posted for Thursday, April 6, 2023. And I believe we do have a few items posted today.
Staff definitely does have a few we would like to go over, Mayor. If
Okay.
council has any questions, but obviously we'd be happy to answer those, but there's a few items I'd like to highlight.
Staff, I'm sorry, council, anything on the agenda for staff dives in? Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mayor. So I had asked Justin to be ready to give an update on our brush and bulk collection service. Item C on your consent agenda tonight is ratifying the contract that we spoke, or I mentioned briefly at your last city council meeting. So he is here and ready to give an update on progress and some updates to probably a future action item for the contract as well.
Thank you, Brent. Kind of gonna go over what we've already contracted D&J Enterprises for, what's on the council agenda to ratify tonight. We estimated early on in the project, we estimated 40,000 cubic yards was still out there of brush. As of yesterday, we picked up 34,650 cubic yards. So we're 87% done with collection on our initial estimate. I'll get to that in a little bit. On the cost of it, it was 376,000, just a little under 400,000. On your agenda item tonight, it is 400,000 is what we're asking for to ratify. We are 69%. The reason that is way lower than the 87% of collection is because grinding is part of that services. The grinder started. It was 12 days of grinding is what we estimated. The grinder started. It went down for a while. We're not getting charged for the time that it was down. It's back up and running again. We anticipate that to quickly catch up. Grinding is getting done of all the collection that we've done. I can show you the areas on the left are the areas that we are completed, the gray areas. So areas 2, 1, and 7 are complete. And we're in area 8 currently. As you see on the bottom chart, that's the chart that we've been updating our website with daily. We anticipate to be done in area 8 on Saturday.
What's that dividing line between 7 and 8? Is that 31st?
Yes, third, mostly. Okay, it's
I'm looking at the brush collection map.
on the north end of the.
No, I'm sorry, on the
Okay.
east-west line.
Street.
Yeah, right in there.
It's 3rd Street.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So we do anticipate the contractor being done in area 8 by Saturday. That was the original 20 days that we originally had contracted them for. We do have areas 3, 5, 6, and 4 to go with the brush collection. The bulk collection, with hiring them and it has relieved our resources a little bit. So we've been able to pick up bulk a little bit faster than we anticipated. We're currently in area 5. We should be done next week with areas 6 and 3. So we should be caught up by next week, picking up everybody's bulk trash for one time all the way through the city since the storm. What we're asking is for a future agenda item is we anticipate there's 20,000 cubic yards still out there to be collected. So after Saturday, 20,000 cubic yards is what we're estimating. With that being said, if we allow these guys to continue, they're 58% done collecting right now. So, and you can see the chart on the top right. We started out, we anticipated they would collect 2,000 cubic yards a day for the 15 days that they've been out there currently, or 15 or 16 days that they've been out there. It took a few days to reach that, but you can see that they're well over that now. The first few days we start out in area 2, farthest from the landfill. It just makes sense that they weren't getting as many trips and day hours in the day to collect what we thought they could do. And that's really it.
Back up one slide real quick, Justin. Just one thing that's important to understand here with this one, when you look at the amount per day that they're collecting and you equate that to what we could pick up in a single truck, that's about 100 truckloads per day.
Yes. Yeah.
Say, so, our ability to do that same thing would be extremely limited to collect it at that pace.
There's just so much more out there than we anticipated, and there's still people putting stuff out. I think there's a lot of green piles, and they should not be green at this point from the storm, but there are still green piles being put out there. So it's just compounding as we're going through.
And limbs are still falling. Not a lot.
This is our brush season anyway, but this was just, exponentially more than normal.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So on some of those piles where they've got brush and then maybe mattresses or other stuff on top,
Yes.
will that just be skipped?
We've been putting that message out there that we will skip them, but do not call us and expect us to pick it up. But the contractor does have a skid steer in some of those areas where they're working. And they're actually separating those piles and then we're going back and collecting the bulk and they're picking up the brush. So they're doing a good job doing that, but
Just curious, it seems like in my neighborhood, most of them are commingled. at
commingled,
this
yes,
point.
ma'am.
We're
We,
not being punitive about it,
Yeah.
but truly like keeping the citizens to do the best they can to keep it separated helps us go fast.
right.
The ordinance specifies a fee for that, but we don't charge it, so.
We plan to in the future.
If you can grind a 6-inch oak plant, you guys can grind a mattress. That's no big deal, right? Look at that thing.
You'd certainly be able to grind a couch, why not?
And I failed to introduce Andres Castro and Dan Goldsmith, operations manager, project manager for D&J. That's helping us do this.
Okay.
If y'all have any direct questions.
So was the, so they thought it'd be 40,000 cubic yards, right?
Yes, sir.
And it turned out to be 60,000. It is
Still what we're
kind of the
estimating.
Updated estimate.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, so obviously they're gonna come back for some more money.
Yes, sir.
And will it be 50% more? I mean, are we staying in line with the original?
Right at
estimate?
that. We originally said 376, 400.
Yeah.
We're estimating high, 207,000. So
Okay. Have you guys run into anything else you didn't expect other than just higher volume? I mean, is there,
Yes, couches, mattresses.
I think we covered that.
Yeah, we do expect that.
I'm joking.
We come across that quite a bit. And honestly, it's not that bad here, the commingling with what we're used to.
Okay.
We've just seen a lot worse. So the community's done a good job of separating as far as we're concerned. But no, the biggest hurdle, if you will, is just that the debris kept coming out and kept coming out. So since the time I first came to visit, the time that we started to today, just so much more has come out.
You think the 40,000 yards was accurate if additional stuff hadn't been added to the curb over time?
I think it's
Pretty
close.
Yeah. So it's not a matter of the estimate being off much. It's just a matter of being, springtime and just more stuff.
Yes, sir.
People adding to it. Well, in the historic district is one of the first areas that was cleaned up. And I thought about this meeting today, driving down the streets I was going to work, and I bet 50% of the houses have more brush out in front of them. I know I know historic district was first.
yes.
So
If you're gonna try to guess how much you'd have by end, and just get it all done, it's like a calculus
right.
in your insurance.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll probably approve that next one. I'm not gonna do it. So, Okay,
Well, I think you say we'll probably improve, obviously. we'll
no, I
try
said
to.
approved, yes.
Oh, well, yes. I just think that the distinction to, residents, I'm in the fortunate and unfortunate situation of where I'm walking the streets for a variety of reasons on good days. And I got torn up last Saturday, which was a beautiful day, about brush
I
and
apologize.
trash. Don't be silly. There's nothing for you to apologize for. I don't think it's been clear to residents. And when you try to make it clear, they don't understand that it's taking more time because there's more stuff being put out. Because the response is, well, where were we supposed to put it? Because we've always put brush out on the time we're supposed to put it out. To me, we're just not explaining that. And I certainly was incapable of explaining because it's sort of inexplicable.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that there was a misestimate in any way. It's more stuff because of the season. So so next time, if this were to occur, same cycle, same timing, we ought to anticipate that there will be more stuff continually added because people are always pruning.
In hindsight, I think I reacted too slow as getting help. And I'll be the first one to say that. I think that, it was way more than I thought we could handle in the beginning, but, this proves that there's just continue to be putting out and we can't keep up.
My opinion is, I think that Public Works had a good plan. I think the plan was solid. There was just so much of it. You know, and we just,
And more of it.
yeah, and I think I told you guys, the mayor from Harker Heights called me. In fact, I saw him again yesterday and we talked about it. He goes to church over here. And so he was driving around after church one Sunday, he called me the next day. And he said, how are you guys gonna, what's the plan to clean this up? He said, if this happened in Harker Heights, that's when, when we were doing the grapple trucks,
Yes.
into the roll-offs, into the dump trucks,
Right.
into the, and he said, there is no way that they'd be able to handle it. In fact, yesterday when I saw him, he said, yeah, we're thinking about buying one brush truck. Like, really? You know, that's still not gonna help if this happens again. So, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about that. It's not, to me, I look at it sort of akin to, whenever we had the ice storm. What was that, Uri, right?
Yes.
Whatever that was. And people were asking, where are the snowplows? Where are the city? We don't have snowplows. Yeah, we don't do that. And it's, just, we were ill prepared for that with not having
No, we
snowplows.
weren't ill prepared.
We didn't have
We're not gonna
snowplows.
buy snowplows,
Well,
are
I
we?
know, the many citizens thought we should have snowplows.
Well,
It's one of the contracts
That is just,
of building the sanctuary for Easter Sunday. You have to balance having every available resource at your fingertip and how much you want to pay in taxes
Right.
and fees. And, if you only have a need for it every once in a while, it's probably, your value probably goes to not having everything that you could possibly need at any moment,
Mhm.
because you don't want to have to pay for those resources. But I think that Justin and his team, I think we all can agree, they have done an amazing job.
yes.
We always learn from events. We do an after action review of any serious critical incident, emergency operations center response. And we do have things we can do better, and we will learn and improve and do that. But I think that you guys have done a great job. I would ask your consideration. I hope you'll approve this because I already signed it. And so that they can continue the work, we will be bringing another contract back for ratification. So please let me know if you have any concerns with that, because we would like to keep them mobilized in the community so we can get the brush picked up as soon as possible. As Kathy just pointed out, me and Kathy and Dawn and Raphael don't have our brush picked up yet, so we still need them.
is it 4 trucks, 4 trailers,
Yes, sir.
plus the grinder and
Yes, sir.
skid
And
steer?
and some equipment. Yes, sir.
Well, in your after action review, as you all do more of it, we've got to do something about teaching citizens about separating.
That's my number one goal this year.
I
It
have
is.
no suggestions whatsoever.
I've got a
I
lot.
just, oh, do you?
I've learned a lot and we're gonna have some moving things go, different things moving.
And that's something even when we're not in this
Oh,
situation.
exactly.
Yeah.
If we can do that, because if it's all commingled, then we have to take it to the landfill rather than being able to keep brush separate and keeping that out of our landfill.
And if
Well,
we're
I-
consistent with the way that we approach it, you're not having to teach, an entire community a different set of behaviors, in an
Depending on
emergency
the-
event, yeah.
Which requires some sensitivity training, which I clearly was lacking last Saturday. And need, trying to be helpful, explaining to people how if, see this pile here, if you separated it, things would go faster, and oh boy.
Feel free to
I
have.
sounded nicer then than I do right now, but it wasn't not nice enough.
For the record, I did not chew Susan out about my brush pickup at my house.
Give her a call.
You got mine, so thank you.
If I may add,
We know your wife's not happy, Richard.
as your contractor and a good partner to you guys, we are available after action review time
Mhm.
at no cost to the city, anytime you need us.
Okay.
We'll,
Thank
we'll,
you.
share any information we can and help you guys,
Yeah.
put that report together that we do.
Thank you.
Well, we do have lots of happy citizens who thank us. We really do. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Justin, did you thank the other staff member that helped with the presentation?
Priscilla, I need to thank her very much for putting this PowerPoint together.
Dawn?
Lynn Belinda.
Thank you very much. Yes.
A certain staff member.
And I will add, Mayor, my staff has identified, they've been working with,
Belinda's been.
Belinda.
crucial. Yeah.
and they've identified, some contingency dollars to fund the
Okay.
additional work.
Money bags.
That's important.
I don't know what it would look like. I don't know what it would feel like to be shipwrecked on an island and look out and see the rescue boats coming. But I was at the bank Monday morning when those guys drove in, that Monday when they got here and seen those, I'm like, they're here. They're finally here. It was such a relief.
He said you teared up a little bit.
Well, I drove up, was having taking pics like that. I'll see you later. I'm down.
They might have signed autographs.
Yeah. What I wanted to do is run the gravel. That's all I want to do.
We can arrange that.
30-minute certification and I'm ready. right.
She
Thank
has
you.
signed the contract, yeah. we
Good job.
put
Really.
a Cammy out there, Mayor gets to drive
There you
it
go.
first.
They won't let me drive a truck on the new test track, fire truck. I'm still working on that.
Well, the chief is stricter.
We could do a trash truck.
There you go. There you go. That's it, but that's just pulling forward and stopping, and then pulling forward. No power slides.
No.
Okay. We should probably refocus this meeting. So,
Yeah, before we go on to the next item, something that occurred to me in the conversation about Belinda and Justin and just, I wanted to highlight to you all, at the point that that Justin, said, I'm struggling. It was a matter of, I would say even just hours that Belinda mobilized, found the contract that we could piggyback on. I mean, it's neat to see your team come together and solve a problem. And it's, from all different departments, Kathy and her team getting the contract through. I mean, it's just, you have a really good department head team and department team, and they work well together to help make sure that our community is well served. So
If I could add something also to that, Belinda did jump very fast in motion. Andres was here on that Friday. I think we contacted him on Wednesday. He was in town Friday, kind of assessing the damage. The company was here that following Tuesday to start work. So that's how fast we all jumped in and got it going. And it really was neat that the team reacted the way it did.
Linda is online.
So,
That's the day the mayor was crying.
That's the speed of government.
yeah.
yeah. Now you're picking facts. You better be careful down there. All right, very good. We're over here patting ourselves on the back, but thank you guys also for mobilizing so quickly. That was awesome. And it was beautiful. Good job. We appreciate y'all.
We do.
All right, what else? What's next?
Okay, so another topic I just wanted to bring up and for a bit of workshop discussion is item number 5 on your regular agenda tonight. It is a first reading of a zoning case that is kind of I guess a phase 2 of a recent case that you all considered and approved on the Shallow Ford Road. Same developer, Todd Scott, coming back with phase 2. Because of the neighbor concerns and council conversation and concerns about approving, more development along Shallow Ford based on its current condition. Brian and his team have been working with Todd and his team on potential options for how we might help accelerate improvements to Shallow Ford Road. So Todd has been very generous with his time in doing some cost estimates for us of what improvements for the portion of Shallow Ford Road that would connect to Robin Hood and go past the development. You'll see the slides in the regular session tonight, or we can pull them up now if you prefer, as well as improvements to Robin Hood, which would connect the development back onto Hickory. So that cost is estimated at a little over $4 million. So I wanted to provide that information to you for your perspective tonight. I do think that if it's council's desire, that the developer would be willing to work with us on some type of development agreement to help accomplish those improvements. So I just wanted you to have that information as you consider your deliberations tonight regarding that zoning case. And Brian, I don't know if you have anything to add, but he'll have his full presentation, but that's something I wanted you to be aware of, is an opportunity for us to explore if you would like us to do that.
And then details of the developer agreement will be in your presentation.
The developer agreement would be something that we would be happy to open negotiations with Todd on, if that's something that the council desires. You could absolutely, I would recommend perhaps considering a motion to the city manager in conjunction with your consideration of the zoning case tonight, requesting that we begin those negotiations. So the agreement hasn't been negotiated. We just wanted to give you some cost estimate perspective. And again, I do think that we have willing partner in the if we want to explore that further.
And I'm assuming if there's, if an agreement is not reached, then the development would not go forward. I mean, that's part of the concern of the development and the extra traffic.
Kathy, could they put a condition on the plan development related to?
I mean, if not, then the developer just says, I'm not doing it, but we're building development anyway. And that
As a
would not,
condition that we reach an agreement regarding the redevelopment and reconstruction of Shallow Ford. It's a little unusual, those usually aren't the types of conditions that we approve, but let me look at something while we're talking.
well, and I'm not trying to, I mean, otherwise it doesn't
Usually
have
just
any
work in
teeth,
good faith.
right? Kind of like what we've talked about, a neighborhood outside the city connecting to water, and then what's their, water and sewer, then what's their motivation to annex into the city? That's all.
I think, typically when we have these situations, and we've done this before, we're able to work in good faith with the developer. You are right that if you don't have some kind of condition in the plan development, that it wouldn't be anything binding. But it's in the developer's best interest to have the roadway improved for his development. He's been they've been very participatory in planning with this one, but you are right. If you don't have some type of condition, it wouldn't be, there wouldn't be any requirement to do so. So that is a consideration.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just something that I mean, otherwise you get the problem
Right.
without the solution.
And I guess my question is, because my mind immediately went to all of the things that are normally included in a developer participation agreement. So what would the motion be? Just that we execute an agreement that says what? I mean, is it up to, staff discretion to what is negotiated, or what would it be that they pay for X amount of the cost? I mean, I guess,
Aren't those usually like a 70-30 split? Or could you even say that this, I guess you could, I mean, obviously it's a road, right? It's gonna connect into the neighborhoods. There's gonna be more benefit to the city beyond just that one development,
yes.
right?
As part of the original plan development conditions, we were requesting he construct 900 linear feet
300
at each entrance,
two different phases,
total.
but 600 total.
600 total
California
linear feet
is on cost.
at his cost. So, one option would be he continue to pay that. And then the part that he wouldn't normally be required to build if we wanted that constructed, and he was willing to do so, that we pay that portion.
And he's been amenable to that or did y'all just simply ask for
I think
a
that
cost estimate?
and Brian, since you've had the direct conversation, I don't want to misrepresent, but I
Sure.
think he is open to a developer participation agreement, but we do not have a term sheet or any, it's been just some very basic conversations. But he did go as far as to provide us cost estimates at our request, and he was willing to do that. Is that a fair assessment?
That's fair. And so I think the goal is obviously shallow forward, but ultimately getting the traffic generated by that development kind of safely out of the neighborhood onto Hickory. That's kind of a path of least resistance in a lot of ways. So if that's the goal, then it's a matter of giving city the authorization to negotiate with them to get that project done.
I think what I would suggest for simplicity's sake today is if this is something you want to consider, that you don't add a condition to the plan development. At this point, you just direct staff to begin to open the negotiations, and then at second reading, we'll endeavor to have more clear terms of what an agreement would look like.
So the
It gives us
special-
a couple of weeks to work with the developer.
Okay.
And then if we're not happy with the progress, you still have a second bite of the apple, if you will. But that gives us a couple of weeks to work with Mr. Scott and see if we can come back with some more definitive terms of what that participation agreement might look like.
So tonight's special motion language is adequate, right? Based on coming back in 2 weeks.
Right, direct staff to
Okay.
open negotiations.
All right.
So it would theoretically pass tonight with some kind of language about the developer agreement.
Right.
And in 2 weeks, if staff is not satisfied with the agreement that's being negotiated or come forward at that point, we would withdraw our support.
Oh,
I would say that if it really would be more council, if council feels comfortable with the terms that we've been able to reach, the substantive terms we've been able to reach, then, we could probably at that point put some kind of condition within the plan development that would be, that would reflect a little bit clearer understanding of who's gonna do what
To when.
related to shallow
When.
board, right? Yes.
And if staff is not reaching some kind of comfort level with talking, then council could say, we're
could table it.
delaying this,
You
we're
could table
tabling it, or we're withdrawing, or we're taking a hike forever, or whatever.
Right, you could not approve on second reading.
Okay, I
You
got
could
it.
table, but
I'm not
I,
suggesting that, I'm just looking at an
I feel fairly confident that we could get to, some reasonable terms in a
Sure.
couple of weeks for your consideration.
I just wanted to understand the worst case possible
Yes, ma'am.
scenario.
Mhm. Understood.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Are you?
Okay, what else?
I have one more really quickly. Can you pull up your CO series 2023 project? So you have an item on your agenda under bond items to consider adopting a resolution which authorizes proceeding with issuing the Series 2023 combination tax and revenue certificate of obligation. And that's Tracy's item. She's going to go over in depth with you during the regular session. But I did want to just give a quick summary to council of the project that would be supported by that action tonight. So the recommended package that you'll be considering tonight is one totaling $44.8 million, which is for projects related to our facilities CIP, our public safety CIP, our places and spaces CIP, and our mobility CIP, as well as a $40 million package related to reinvestment zone number 1 projects. So under public safety, it's proposed a total of $10.3 million for projects including property acquisition for future fire stations, the simunition shoot house at the Public Safety Training Center, new mobile command post vehicle, a fire training skills pad, as well as the replacement of one of our fire apparatus. As a reminder, late last year or early this year, you adopted the updated fire master plan, which identified over time that we are going to need several new fire station locations. So it's staff recommendation that we begin to look for and secure property for those future developments at this point. Again, the simunition shoot house is a part of the Public Safety Training Center, and we are ready to move forward with the construction of that project at this time, as well as the driving skills training pad. So this is a schematic of the driving skills training pad, not counting this year, which would probably be interesting, but the last time that I checked, if you put all of the miles that Justin's team drives back to back, they would all be driving from the moon to the moon and back twice every year. So there's lots of driving going on between solid waste and other public works, fire and police. And so having a safe place for them to train to keep our community safe as well as our employees safe is important. So this project would be located at the expanded Public Safety Training Center, as well as the simunition shoot house, which would replace or begin to replace the very dated police shooting range facility that does not actually have this current capacity. So while we are under design with other elements of the Public Safety Training Center, these two items we are ready to move forward with at this time, as well as the beginning purchase of the new mobile command unit. And just a reminder from Chief's budget presentation, what the optimal unit would look like. Related to facilities, the projects that we're ready to move forward with at this time include the expansion to Service Center, Building A, as well as some HVAC replacements at both the historic post office building and the Parks and Recreation Department administration building, and the refurbishment of the elevator at the historic post office.
Bryn, excuse me, just
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
We saw this slide last week at the meeting. And I got home and I started to think about it. The Parks and Recreation building we just rebuilt. We have to replace the HVAC now?
I think it's the rebuilding was related to mold remediation, and the scope of that did not include the air conditioner units. We knew when we purchased the building, I believe in 2017, 2018 timeframe, that one of the HVAC systems was original to the building and would, in the preceding years
Okay.
need to be replaced. So this is just part of the
Okay.
normal overall maintenance of the building
Okay.
and not tied to the mold remediation.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Related to our places and spaces project list, several exciting projects. This is the first issuance of the multi-phase plan for the places and spaces program. The projects that we are recommending move forward in this year's issuance include those that you see on the screen. I'm going to highlight several of them with maps, but the Nugent Avenue improvements from 3rd to 14th Street, Jones Park improvements, district identification, the 3rd Street Miller Park Trail, reimbursing for the already executed acquisition of additional parkland in South Temple that you all authorized several months ago, playground equipment and shade structures at several of our parks, pickleball courts at Crossroads Park, the continuation of our Love Where You Live neighborhood planning program with the development of the district master plans as well as zoning overlays for the upcoming year. Improvements to Blackman Center at Wilson Park, which is a recreation center used for after school and summer programming. Construction of the dog park near Miller Park. Yay! Guard room improvements at Lions Junction, and beginning the design of the boardwalk and overlook at Miller Springs. You'll note that that is just design only. Once we get those improvements designed, they have to go through the approval process with the Corps of Engineers, which can is probably not the poster child, Tracy, for speed of government. So we recommend that we have the design ready and go through the approval process and then issue the funding for the actual improvements in a future phase. So just a reminder, some of the projects that are coming out of our neighborhood plans that this would fund. This is the Nugent project, improvements to Nugent Avenue, including enhanced pedestrian accessibility, Jones Park improvements, including new playground, basketball court improvements, a new splash pad. So lots of exciting updates there at Jones Park in the Midtown neighborhood. 3rd Street and Miller Park trail connection, which is mentioned in Bel Air District, I believe. And then several upgrades to our existing parks and their play equipment. We're recommending a new shade structure at Ferguson. That the actual playground we are recommending be replaced as part of the Avenue C and clearing the Avenue C and 24th Street improvements, but that playground right now lacks a shade structure. So at this point, we're recommending that the shade structure be installed and the playground improvements come in the future. And then playground replacements at Waterford, Lions playground near Mercer Field, the Lions playground at the Pavilion, and Silverstone Park. Here's a rendering of the proposed area for the Nugent Avenue Dog Park. And then artist schematic rendering of what a overlook might look like at Miller Springs Nature Center. And then mobility related projects, we have a couple of notable ones here. The continuation of the pavement preservation and reconstruction program. So that's our mill and overlay program that we talked about a couple of months ago. We're also recommending the funding for reconstruction of Barnhart Road. As you all will recall, that road is adjacent to the new TISD Sampson Howard Elementary School and will be an important access point for their bus routing. So we would like to move forward with completing the improvements in this area. Also, the reconstruction of 42nd Street from Lavandusky to Loop 363. There's quite a bit of residential development in that area. And we also are recommending that we begin some design work on improvements from on Midway Drive from I-35 to Hickory Road. Again, this is not construction money, just beginning the design work to understand that that's a very large project, and we would like to have a better understanding of what that would look like and what the probable cost of that would be as we continue our planning for implementing the mobility master plan. We're also recommending that we plan for at least one new signalized intersection installation each year. We have 4 lights pending that have been approved by TxDOT. I believe that this funding would go towards the 317 and Orion signal. Poison Oak would be constructed as Poison Oak, and 317 would be constructed as part of the capital improvement project that's starting, and Partridge Bluff and 93 has also been approved by TxDOT and would be part of that improvements to Partridge Bluff. And the last one is escaping my memory. I don't know if anyone knows. I can find out if you
On the
all-
signals, I get it. Just a second.
And then last but not least, the $40 million for projects within the reinvestment zone. And the big one here is the outer loop section from Winland to I-35, which, just as a reminder, includes a flyover there at the railroad intersection. So quite a large project. It also includes funding for accelerating the installation of a water transmission main between 31st Street and 5th Street. This project was originally planned in, I believe, to begin in 26 or 27, FY 26 or 27. But this water line is going to be installed inside the Georgetown Railroad right-of-way. And this is the section of the right-of-way that is part of phase 1 of trail improvements that we have funded and are wanting to begin very soon. So what we don't want to happen is we put the trail in and then come back later and tear the trail up or disrupt the trail, close the trail to put in the water line. So we wanted to get the water line in first so that when the trail goes in, there's no disruption to that amenity. So again, Tracy's going to cover more detail about the actual process of issuing the certificate of obligations in the regular session. I just wanted a quick opportunity to remind everyone of the projects that this allows us to move forward with.
What was the increase in cost? I'm not putting you on the spot, but the increase in cost for that flyover on the railroad track?
There's been multiple. It started out.
Where did it start and where did it end?
It started at 8 million,
That's
and then we added, I think, 6 million, and then we added 5 million. So about 19 million of that flyover.
And that was all just construction and material cost.
And I think it's some scope and like the retaining walls and different things.
It was, there was addition, not just materials, because there was some design plan, wasn't there? Change.
Expanded scope.
Need to be higher, I think. For some, I will remain nervous until that project.
That's a big one too.
Nervous about?
That the OPC is.
When's it fitting in?
We are, I think, you guys remember, let me look it up while so we don't hold up the meeting. I'll look up James' most recent schedule. Sometime this summer.
Yeah, they really expected to go to the zone board in June or July, because that's the line with actual funding. And you're right, I think they're waiting on something with the other side. Yeah, that's a big one to see where we're at on the monies.
That can get away from you pretty quick, I bet.
We had one open today that was good. Pepper Creek wastewater, that we took the EQ basin out of, rebid it. You seen the bid? It's like the low bid, and that's not official, but it's like 1.7 million. So a bit under what we.
By taking the basin out?
Yeah, it takes a basin out and just bidding that by itself.
Takes the basin out, rebids the project to be a scope that is more traditional, so probably doesn't have a multiplier, an unknown, I don't know, the contractor doesn't know exactly about the EQ basin, so they multiply a bit. And the schedule was originally quite condensed and we have more time at this point.
If I remember correctly, that portion, the original low bid was close to 3 million.
Very nice.
That's for the meta side.
Same contract.
So with their redesign, have they determined that they don't need an equalization basin? Why are we deleting the basin?
I don't know that we're properly posted to go into that, but we can certainly.
It's just a yes or no.
I can't answer that in a yes or no question, so we'll follow up with that.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Supposed to be speaking about.
True.
That's my main concern. So
All right. I got you.
we'll get you that information
Okay,
there.
thank y'all. Okay, anything else before we move on to item 2?
Would you put that back up, Bryn? While we were sitting here, nothing like being $1, go back one more,
Okay, just
keep going.
tell me when to stop.
Well, I will. The first group that talked about, no, not that far, I'm sorry.
I will.
What are you looking for? What's your,
The Midway.
oh, yes, ma'am.
While we were sitting here and talking about being $1 short and a dime late, or whatever the saying is.
Day short and $1 later,
That
$1 short and a day later.
Yeah, well, I'm really, really out of whack here, but it just occurs to me, sitting here, Midway, I-35 to Hickory. If indeed, what's Tim saying?
No, I just need to clean.
Okay, all right, it just,
A little dopey down there.
this goes through. If indeed we work everything out on Shallowford, would it make any sense to try to look at the other portion of Shallowford that connects up essentially to Midway? I mean, it's a lot more, but you're gonna have people coming out to there, redoing Midway, redoing some big portion of Shallowford. I mean, this is probably the wrong place to mention it, but I'm just.
No, we will definitely take that back, and as we continue refining, our capital project list for the upcoming budget, so. Again, these are projects that were funded in the FY 23 budget, or that we're recommending, moving forward with. If you will allow us, we'll take that feedback and it's very timely because we're right, elbow deep in budget and capital, planning right now. So we'll evaluate that and bring back as a additional conversation as we talk more
Okay,
about
good.
future capital projects for
It's
24 and
just
beyond.
Yes, it's just taking into account that here we are kind of sidewinded by Shallowford, which was not in any long-term or immediate plans, and
That's
here
true.
we are.
That's true. Yes, ma'am.
Was the 24th Street project?
It's already funded.
It's already.
Yes,
We budgeted it, yeah.
yes, it's already been, so it has funding already ready to go when it's ready, and it's actively being designed.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, we'll now move on to
That was
item.
probably the longest item 1 we've had in a while. Apologies for that.
That's all right. We covered a lot of ground. Item 2 reads to have a discussion regarding the court of record. Wherever you would like. Do you need the clicker?
Yes, and Kathy's
Somebody
gonna
need the clicker?
kick us off. Judge has some wonderful slides, and then Buford is going to wrap us up.
Yes, so this is a topic long in coming. There's been a lot of staff discussion around it, I think, that precedes me here. So I think now is the time to bring this forward as an option and I'm going to start off in my presentation. We'll cover the statutory requirements for creating a municipal court of record. Then Judge Person will follow up and discuss the changes that would be needed within the court if we do transition to a court of record. And then Buford will follow up with a few case studies that will show us how being a court of record and the expansion of jurisdiction and options for the court would help him complete his work. And if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. So the creation and the abolition of a municipal court of record is governed by Texas Government Code Chapter 30. We would both create and, if the moment ever came, abolish such a court by ordinance. In order to create the court, there would have to be a finding that the creation of the court is necessary to provide a more efficient disposition of the cases arising in the municipality. And we, as a staff, do believe that that is the case. You would be able to establish as many courts of record as you felt were needed. However, you would have to choose. You can't have a court of record and a non-court of record. There would be no term for the court, and it would be consistent and open for business for as long as we need this to be. If at some point in the future, the governing body found that the court of record is unnecessary, then by ordinance, you would abolish the court and then declare the office of the judge vacant at the end of the current term. The jurisdiction of the municipal court of record has the same as the general law provides to municipal court. So it would maintain the jurisdiction that it has now. It wouldn't have any less jurisdiction, but it would have expanded opportunities. In addition to what it currently has, a municipal court of record also would have jurisdiction over criminal cases that arise under the local government code that governs dairy and slaughterhouses, nuisances, the authority to police areas owned by a city that is outside of its city limits, as well as protection of streams and watersheds. We would also have concurrent jurisdiction with the justice courts and criminal cases that occur within our city and that are punishable by fine only, so Class C misdemeanors if authorized by ordinance, and concurrent jurisdiction with district and justice courts over expunction proceedings that relate to Class C misdemeanors. And then if you chose, you could also authorize these additional jurisdiction expansion opportunities. That would be civil jurisdiction to enforce ordinances enacted under the dangerous structures section of the local government code and junk vehicles in the transportation code. We could also have concurrent jurisdiction with district court and county court at law to enforce health and safety and nuisance abatement ordinances. And then a big one is the authority to issue search warrants to investigate health and safety or nuisance abatement ordinance violations and seizure warrants to secure, remove, or demolish offending property and remove the debris from the premises. And I know that's one area that I think would help us a lot. And again, these would have to be within the ordinance creating the municipal court of record in order for the court to have these expanded jurisdictions. The municipal judge would be appointed by ordinance as well, and you would be able to appoint as many as needed. The judge must be a resident of Texas and a citizen of the United States, as well as a licensed attorney in good standing with at least 2 years of practice within the state of Texas. You could select either a 2-year term or a 4-year term, and that would also be established by the ordinance. The judge is a magistrate who would be able to issue administrative search warrants and would also be able to grant writs of mandamus, attachment, and other writs necessary to enforce the jurisdiction of the court, as well as writs of habeas corpus. The council would determine the judge's salary, and it would not be able to be reduced during a specific term, and the salary may not be based either directly or indirectly on any fines, fees, or costs collected by the court. If you appointed multiple judges, one must be selected as the presiding judge, and that judge would maintain the docket, distribute cases, request jurors, supervise the clerks, establish the court security committee, basically be the boss judge. And you may appoint one or more qualified attorneys to be able to temporarily fill in for the judge. So if you only chose to select or appoint one judge of the municipal court of record, then your other alternative would be to have a list of attorneys that the judge could then select from if she needed to be on vacation or sick, instead of having a second full-time judge. if the position became vacant during an unexpired term, you would be able to appoint by ordinance a new judge to fill the vacancy of that unexpired term. And the government code does provide that the municipal judge may be removed either according to our charter or according to the Texas Constitution, or another provision in the government code if the charter is silent. Our charter only says that the municipal court judge is subject to discharge by the city council, and that's it. No other process that applies. So I think what we would do is then follow the process that's set out in the Constitution and in the government. If we ever got to that. And the grounds for terminating a judge all revolve around incompetency, official misconduct, or intoxication on or off duty. I thought that one was interesting. All right, other court personnel. The government code does provide that council shall also by ordinance provide for the appointment of a clerk of the court. Our charter does say that the finance director makes that appointment, so I think we could satisfy both requirements in our ordinance, saying that the finance director will make that appointment. And I think we would be in compliance with both requirements. And we may also, the ordinance may also provide for deputy clerk, foreign officers, and any other personnel that's necessary. And the court personnel perform their courtroom duties under the direction and control of the presiding judge while they are in the courtroom. And then outside of the courtroom, when they're performing their administrative duties, then that would be under the jurisdiction of the finance director in that chain of command. Council may also or shall also provide in the ordinance for the hiring, direction, supervision, and removal of any of the personnel that's authorized in the annual budget for the clerk's office. And we would handle that similarly to the appointment of the clerk and say, again, that it's the finance department that makes those appointments. Court reporter. So this is an important difference for a municipal court of record. We are required to tape or somehow record the proceedings in this case. So in order to do that, we would either need to hire a court reporter who would be on staff to record all of the proceedings and be able to transcribe them if necessary for an appeal, or we can record the proceedings by a good quality electronic recording device, which could then be transcribed by a court reporter as needed. And we must have the capability to maintain those recordings for at least 20 days. And that 20-day period would begin on the final proceeding of a trial. The appeals process is also different as it is now. If someone appeals from our courts, if we are not a court of record, then they would go to county court and have a brand new trial all over. We call it taking a second bite at the apple. That's what's called a trial de novo. They get to start all over again. So after they've gone through our court, heard our arguments, seen all of the evidence, seen where they may have made a misstep, then if they're found guilty, then they get to go up to county court and try it all over again. But appeals from a court of record or on the record itself, that means they would have to be able to point into the record where a legal error was made and be able to show that that error was instrumental in them being found guilty. And they would have to then make appellate arguments to the court rather than going to the court and having a trial all over again from scratch. They would have to, this would be on a brief rather than, again, testimony by witnesses. And they would have to file that written motion for a new trial and file appeal bond not later than the 10th day after the judgment has been rendered. So just a few pros and cons of transitioning to a court of record. Some of the pros would be that, again, appeals are not via a de novo trial. This would mean there are no witnesses needed, and it would reduce overtime for our city employees. And again, no second bite at the apple. It would reduce the number of appeals altogether, which would benefit both county and municipal staffs. It would allow us to maintain local control over the prosecution of our code violations, and it would increase our jurisdiction in several instances, and the judge is going to go over that more with you in her presentation. And it would also allow her to issue additional type of warrants. So the cons would be that we would need to absorb the cost of the recording device and some transcriptions. The prosecutor would be required to write appellate briefs, which would be a new skill for him to learn. And then also, if we did come to the point where you needed to remove the judge, it is a more difficult and cumbersome process in order to do that. And that is the end of my presentation on the law. Does anybody have any questions for me before I hand it over to the judge?
How often is something appealed? And then how often is the original ruling overturned on? I mean, ours would. Answer those first.
Do you mean from our court to a trial de novo?
Yeah, or yes, or what's typical? I mean, you always hear something being appealed. And you want everyone to have their opportunity, right? So I just wonder how often an appeal turns the tide for the defendant.
I would say it's not uncommon if for a regular municipal court where a defendant is getting a trial de novo at county court to have the second trial go more in their favor. And there's a few reasons why. At the county court level, I think we all know they have less time to spend preparing for a trial. That means familiarizing themselves with the evidence. That means talking to the witnesses and preparing themselves. And then also they don't have the interest in ensuring that the community is protected from behavior that's maybe, not what we want in our community.
Right.
So all of those things I think would tend to play into the benefit of the defendant. There are also some defendants who don't even go through the trial process here because they know that they're going to have an easier time with their case. And that's usually when when defendants are represented by attorneys who understand the process a little more. They'll come to the municipal court, they'll plead guilty, and then immediately appeal it to county, where it's an easier process for them to get through, and they're more likely to have a verdict in their favor.
When you change this, if you change this, the appeal is still a review of that record. And, most appeals are not successful because the law really looked at the analogy. And so the way appellate courts treat that is, there needs to be errors that are reflected in that record that are really, cause harm. So there is a review process. If you think about it another way, there's no other area of the law where you get two trials if you want. This is the one little there's a nice little loophole for certain types of cases.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's difficult to find actual legal error in a record and then make those arguments and then have the judge find in your favor on an appeal. So it's much more difficult to be successful appealing on the record as opposed to a trial de novo going to the county court.
They could also use the first trial as like a test trial.
Yeah.
And if they lose, they can say, well, that argument didn't work. Let's try this other way, which doesn't seem right either.
Thank you.
Is this presentation or request or idea being generated in-house? This is not from out, somebody's asking us to do something. Are we trying to modernize? Are we seeing this elsewhere and thinking, oh, we should have done this, something along those lines?
Well, we've talked about it many times.
We've
And it
had
just-
some conversation in here at your, you presented.
It's come up periodically.
Okay,
And I think it's right now.
okay.
Could it have been right before? Possibly. Can you wait and do it another time? Of course. I think it's right for a lot of reasons, but I
Okay.
think probably as we get into some of the code ideas, there's a pretty big rightness there as far as the readiness of the staff that you have available that I think, is really fresh and ready to go.
Okay, good. Thanks.
But-
Buford is going to show some case studies that will show some of the issues that we have today. And if we had this new set of tools in our box, what we could accomplish,
Okay.
how the outcomes or the speed of outcomes could be different. And so he'll kind of give you some real world examples that you'll probably be familiar with a few of them.
I'm sure that some of the things that we shrieked at you for and said, why can't you do?
Yes.
It's this.
Yes.
This is something we're recommending
Okay.
to help us, serve the community better.
And I'll say just along that line, and then I'm gonna jump on in. Some things that are not gonna get heavily involved in this, any of the presentations, but I know, like, for example, when I prosecuted, and I remember this, if I had a case where someone was stopped for I'm pointing to the chief, acting chief, someone stopped for a DWI and they also got a traffic ticket, which they probably don't do that as much, but that was not an uncommon practice at that time. Folks would come in on their traffic ticket, have a full-blown trial, get all the information and all the testimony and try to lock it down, and then go deal with their DWI at the county with a serious advantage to try to beat that charge.
I see.
So there's a way that that system can get played.
Yeah.
And another similar issue, like with a CDL holder, they can get a different and better deal at the county because of a loophole that exists in the law for just this type of case, like a traffic offense.
Mhm.
If you have a court of record, that loophole is unavailable to you. If you don't, if you have a non-record court, you can go to county and get that off your record in a way that the state law literally looks like you can't do that, but there's a little loop and they can. So there is, in my opinion, when you say, is it right now, it kind of depends on who you're asking. For me, as a prosecutor person in my history, back then I would have said it's now, and that was 16 years ago. So it kind of depends on, who's asking and why. I always am fun. I'm completely not savvy. Let me try.
Turn it the other way. There you
This
go.
way?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think that, there you go.
Okay, so what I did is just kind of highlighted, what are the things that change if we change? So I won't do just a total like reading it to you, but currently, it's a 2-year appointment. That doesn't really change necessarily. And I think this is a little repetitive. Let me make sure this is, my first slide. I'm required, or the judge is required to be able to practice law in Texas and live in Temple and be a US citizen. What gets changed is just that 2-year requirement that Kathy mentioned. The judicial code of ethics don't change. You facilitate the dockets through what are called judge's orders. These are directions for flow of the court settings for the dockets and papers of the court. The change is that 2 years of good standing. I'm just incidentally, the part about not being intoxicated, that's actually a judicial code. So you already actually have that, by the way, but it's just kind of funny,
Kathleen, on that intoxication, that wasn't clarified in the first part,
right. Yeah. I mean, just if you can remove a judge for being
but
intoxicated.
it didn't say where the judge might be intoxicated.
It says publicly, but it doesn't really clarify.
Did it say publicly?
It didn't say publicly.
Okay, well, that's my
It's kind
question.
of a joke that like, y'all might watch me inside my home.
That's what
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm
Yeah.
referring to.
Too drunk at your own party might not be a very good idea. Okay, but it probably wasn't anyway. So because civil jurisdiction gets added, along with the other items, there are going to be more dockets, hearings, and duties for the judge and really a lot of people, as you'll see. Probably the most anticipated issue for me and for any judge would be to just kind of spell out that agreement through some kind of memorandum of understanding, because I'm a current employee. And just making sure that it's clear I'm moving over, hopefully, is what we're saying. That's maybe an anticipated issue. And then this, the judge list, when the judge is not available, I think is probably more important than it has been, because the timetables on these kinds of changes, the types of cases we're going to get into, we have them now. We've had a lot of changes in the law since I took the seat. And, there are things that are unbending on timelines. And so sometimes you're required, like right now with animal services, there's a 10-day window that I have to sign a warrant, get a dog picked up, set a hearing, get everybody served and have a hearing. And if I'm on vacation, now what? Right? So I'm not actually able to take very lengthy vacations. But with there's some ways that we can work on that, but with some of the code items, that's really not true anymore. So that list will become very important. Court staff are all sworn into their positions. That doesn't change. They follow the code of ethics that I have to follow. They are expected to be following them and know what they are. They process the papers of the court. They set up plans. They set cases on the dockets. They work with the various departments. They fulfill all their duties with impartiality. They explain court processes to the public without giving legal advice, and they answer to the court administrator through the finance department. So while they have ethical duties and responsibilities that are established by judicial canons, they're still, they work with, and they are, as far as how their duties are assigned, their workday, their evaluations, all of those things, they're employees of the finance department. And that would not change. The only change there would be, this isn't a restructure, in other words. This is really expanding the court's jurisdiction. The change really is we'll need one or two of those folks to be, and possibly three, just the main court administrator will want to also be familiar with civil processes and those added duties, because he or she in this case will be assigning those out. The prosecutor's position just will have more added cases and added dockets. They currently function like a district attorney or a county attorney. They seek for public justice. These are their mandates. They have a code of ethics as well. By screening cases, filing motions, and seeking convictions of the guilty, it specifically says that. They work with the public, which is sometimes very adversarial for them. It can be a very stressful position, in some ways more than mine, because they're face to face with people who are not happy. But they have a lot of wide discretion on their cases, and they still will. The bigger change there will just be more dockets, more time, and some training. Oh gosh, now what did I do? There we go, nothing terrible. Okay, the bailiff is a sworn officer who is assigned to the court at this time, and they maintain order in the court and security and the decorum during the proceedings of the court and teen court. They also help us with our warrant events, not only to coordinate, but to research and get those ready for us. And they attend to that jury during trials. And the only change there again is just added time for dockets. Currently, our jurisdiction is a Class C misdemeanors that happen within the city. And I do have authority, warrant authority to sign, I call it blood animals and structures. Blood warrants can be signed by your municipal judge if they are an attorney, which I am. And of course, the charter does require it for animals in certain instances, and for structures. We have some go in and look, see authority, but they look, see, and back out right now. But with animals, they do seize. With blood, that's usually coordinated with the county to take the blood of a person refusing to give any kind of sample during an arrest driving type situation. What would change or be added would be nuisance cases and abatement options that would be tools available for staff. Warrant authority gets expanded. And we really become the court of last resort for trials, for the trial proceedings, where you take the testimony of a person and get that testimony. And then that testimony is reduced to first a recording. If it's not challenged within the window of challenge, it's held for an additional 10 days. There's a 20 total days, and then it erases. So you don't keep that forever. There's a way that people have to put you on notice, put the court on notice. Currently, I say not to begin the court of record, but currently how cases begin are citations are issued or complaints are filed. The change would be added civil complaints being filed and abatement filings being added. And these really entail it's not a budget type of change, other than added time for staff and specifics for docketing. But really, these just follow and track a different process in the court, because they're not criminal cases, they're civil cases. And this is highlighted here in this next slide. Currently, a person who's charged can respond in person, in writing by their attorney, by just simply paying online. They enter a plea of guilty, not guilty, or no contest. They don't have a court-appointed attorney, though they can hire one. The change here is you give an answer in a civil proceeding. It's a subtle difference, but you admit or deny the allegations essentially. And we'll probably be doing some education of the public if this moves forward because it will be new and different. I'm gonna hit Justin up and find out what he learned about educating the public. So like right now, the types of cases that we have a lot of traffic cases. That's the bulk of what we do. But we also have the public intoxications, disorderly conduct, drug paraphernalia, thefts, assaults to include family violence, reckless damage, noise, animals, curfew, tobacco, vaping, alcohol offenses, and parking. The change would be adding nuisances, dangerous structures. The jurisdiction added are slaughterhouses, streams, watersheds, parks, lakes. Warrants include adding search and seizure type warrants. And this is the thing that doesn't get talked about a lot, but it is an impact. We would have current jurisdiction or concurrent jurisdiction with the district courts for fine-only cases that can be expunged. So right now, if you have a traffic ticket, let's say pretend 5 years ago, you got a traffic ticket in Mansfield and you decided you wanted that to be completely erased. It was somehow making an impact for you and you want to have it erased. You would go to the district court in that region and you would file an expunction proceeding and have a hearing and pay a filing fee there. Those could be filed in for for fine-only cases. They could be filed in our courts. And that's possible. I have talked to judges where when that law changed, that was a legislative change for years ago. They got a flood of cases just because everyone went, woo, cheaper to file over here. And they kind of talked to me about how they made that work for them and not bury them. So it's just one of those things. And I had a note just to also, no, I've already talked about it. Okay. So dismissals currently, you have some options when you get like a traffic ticket or a criminal case. You can do a driver safety course if you qualify. You can do a deferral if the judge approves it. You can do teen court, and there are some compliance cases, like if your blinker was out, you can get it dismissed if you fix it on time and get to court on time. The change would be on civil cases. Those are only able to be dismissed by a prosecutor recommendation. There's not like a complaint, like you bring it up to date and now it's dismissed. It would have a very formal proceeding for that type of dismissal. And then costs are currently set by the legislature and the judge sets the fines. That doesn't really change. The cost still set by the legislature. There would be those certain types of reparations that might be ordered and made to the city for cleanup, for example. But if the person didn't pay, there's an enforcement proceeding that would require legal filing of judgments and liens with the county. And that would impact legal, and they are aware of that. But just to highlight it to you, that might change a little bit about maybe how they look at what they would put their energy toward. I left the case number file in. I know y'all probably saw it during budget if there was time to go back over that. But, you know, I guess I have this slide in here to just talk about the fact that right now, and, you know, we've had more than 20,000 cases filed in a year at a time. Currently, we're right at about, this is about the number from last year, the last full year. And we dispose of more than we have because we have backlog, not backlog so much as people who ignored for a long time. And then they come in on a new case and they had a bunch of old cases. So that's usually not, there's a pretty even match there. They just aren't all the same cases, right? But teen court is, we have 200 plus teen court cases a year now. Our penal code violations are slightly down. They're different than they used to be. Family violence cases are up more, but our code cases, when I first took the plea, we really probably had none. We just didn't do those. And now we have about 300 a year. And administrative warrants, we didn't do those until a few years ago at all. The dogs, the animals, the structures, we did not do those. And I signed 129 of those last year. The civil case filings, I don't know how many we'll have, that's to be determined. But having worked with the code department back when I prosecuted, I don't think my perception of that, what that addresses has changed a lot. That's almost probably unlimited. I mean, they're just always going, that's just part of life, that's just part of life. But I just had this slide in here to sort of talk a little bit, or to punt out there. What we're really talking about is a change of kind of how we do things a little bit. We're changing our, it used to be that what we did in my court was traffic court. It was just traffic court. And this is different, and I think it's really interesting. I think it has the potential to be very helpful to staff for the problems they face trying to deliver. Budget is mostly time and money, but we do have software. This is kind of after we've gone through several vendors to get bids and talk, and Kelly's been seeing this kind of float by. We haven't obviously gone through a formal selection process, but we did go ahead for budget. We went ahead and got the numbers. This is our uppermost number if we got up some whistles and bells. There are some things that would be in that if we go this direction that would be kind of hidden benefits for me as a judge, that when you talk about people being able to tell their story, there's a way that citizens have a disadvantage not knowing. It's not that they don't know our system. Our system is not weird. It's not, PDFs are PDFs, but there's a way that they walk in thinking, well, I can just show you on my phone. Well, I can't put your phone in my file. So there's some things that we can do there with this that would give a little more access to just the average person walking in on the street to talk a little bit more effectively about the story they're trying to tell about their case. That I asked them to put there's a base thing, and then there's I call it an addendum piece that would do a little bit more for folks. And that number is in this. It's the whole number. I think the software itself alone without that was more like 58, something along those lines, or 60. Training, I don't know. I think that it takes, if you have a judge, and that's another thing about this judge list, is that when you have a judge serve, even off of a list, once they serve a day, they must be trained. There's a timetable. And they have to be trained. They have to go to a specific training. It's judges school. And people always laugh when I say that. I'm like, that, no, it's actually quite serious. But they must go to be in compliance with the law. And they have to go every year. And to get them there and back and pay all of their fees and hotel and all of that, it's about $1,000 for a judge. And then I would anticipate just some training for staff that may or may not be terribly formal, but some probably online training in civil rules. So that's the number for that. And then there's ongoing support for the software that goes anywhere from we decide we don't want that support up to a maximum of about $5,000. And then as far as if you add judges, it's kind of up to you all what you decide to pay that person, those persons. The time is really the biggest issue. More dockets, an impact on really all employees, and training to manage those dockets. Legal will manage judgments and abstracts at county. I think right now all staff being filled is the best option because, we've had a lot of folks retire, and then just any added judge options in a year or two if you want to start adding an actual judge. But there is this list where you wouldn't necessarily be paying someone ongoing, but they would be trained and ready and make themselves available and be familiar enough with how the court is operating so that they could step in if I'm on vacation or heaven forbid I have an accident or something like that. So this goal just really also could encompass improvements to how we execute warrants and have added enforcement options on our criminal cases. We have a number of options for enforcement that we utilize. There's probably about 6 that we utilize very heavily. Warrants are one way that we enforce when people do not comply with a court order. There's limits to how we can arrest folks, and those limits, they have gone from there were no limits when I first began to there's a lot of limits to when you arrest a person. I'm not going to argue that that's good or bad. That's the law and we follow it. And what I'll tell you is if you have a standby set of a judge or set of judges, you know, working with the jail and increasing arrests would be, I think, very helpful also to the police department. Max Ferry and I've talked about that on more than one occasion. It's helpful for them if we do it the right way to get back to doing more of that. But there are so many restrictions. You can't arrest without a judge available 24/7, 365. And so there's a way that those goals can come back online for that particular section of staff, because I know they have that mandate under the law that they arrest people if they have an active warrant. So that's the thank you. So I can just stop here and y'all can tell me what else, if y'all have questions for me,
We've been talking about this for what, 2 years
at least.
or so?
Yes.
With approval, how long would it take to stand it up and get it operating?
I'm looking at the IT director because that's really, yeah, we can't turn it on without having recording capacity
Sure.
installed and ready.
Now what?
I'm sorry, without having recording
Oh,
capacity
right, yeah,
installed and ready.
yeah,
to
that
go.
was on page 1.
Yes. I would say, you know, if you told me today, I would say, assuming that's in place, 6 months, maybe less. But we have new staff that we're training and we have to change processes for a number of things in training. Could I do it in 3 months? Yeah. But I would want to talk to Dana Carl and Tracy Bernard about whether they think I'm overcommitting them.
Space,
Space
issues?
Space doesn't change, no. Because the court is in session, it's open, it's in, and I don't think we need another court. I can't see that happening for a lot of years, if ever.
When we remodeled, when we built the current court, we built it in a way that anticipated that one day we would move to a court of record. And actually technology has advanced to the point where we have more room than we need to install the recording equipment because, you know, that was
Not
14 years ago, 13 years ago, something like that. The space you needed for the recording equipment is larger now. Not that big.
Now it's a cabinet. It used to be a room the size of the little break space in there.
just like the first computer rooms.
So we have a big cold space behind the courtroom that's empty and it's not gonna get filled by this equipment.
Minus a judge, how many more people?
Right now, I would say that there wouldn't be more people. We have a frozen position that would need to be, I think, filled and trained. In a year, I might start saying, I would ask the clerk to look at that, but,
It seemed like we talked about, when we talked about this in the past, that you're gonna add a person or 2 or 3 people.
right, so, yeah, and so when filings went down with the pandemic, because the filings in our court, you know, we respond to whatever shows up, or we tell them we can't respond. Things went down number wise, and it's not really back to what it was, and I think I would maintain it's shifting a bit for what is interesting for staff to be doing as far as like the culture that we have in our city. So I think that was part of it, and I have been looking to have an assistant, which I don't have one. The folks at the clerk side of the equation help me a great deal, and we have case managers that help me, because the team court is probably my biggest piece as far as like what takes up time. Teenagers, anyone who's had one knows that. But you know, seriously though, but with the young people, there's a lot of energy that gets put into that, and we have 2, and they weren't filled always for a while. Now they are. Sometimes I just fumble on their names because I always want to call Ms. Carl the clerk, but actually this is the clerk, and Ms. Carl is her court administrator, and the deputy court administrator, the senior court deputy administrator has been a single person, and there's 2 slots, and if that gets filled and they're cross-trained, I think that she has enough to do it. We do have office space, though. We have space to add people.
I'll speak to that too. Dana
Yes,
and I
thank
have
you, yeah.
discussed this.
Yeah.
With the quarter record
Right.
online. And current staffing needs, and as you mentioned, with in the PD, with the traffic unit not being staffed and COVID and all that.
Right.
Citations issued were way down. But it was at a good time because they were implementing new software that required a lot of their time too.
Yeah.
But Dana, we were meeting even just last week talking about with the quarter record, getting an understanding when it would trigger, what would trigger additional personnel in the future.
Right.
And we did have that position frozen because again, the numbers were way down, but Dana is reaching out to fill that position too. So.
Right, great, yeah.
And we can work together and just, keep an eye on it when additional staff and again, this year in the business plan, we're gonna take a look at it and see if we need to add it in. This, just to put them out as placeholders for the future, assuming numbers tick up.
And from my perspective, changing to the court of record doesn't necessarily drive additional staff. But as we hopefully continue to make progress in staffing at the police level and add positions to our police department, add positions to code compliance, add positions that would drive caseload to the court, that would be the more impactful thing for whether or not, or when additional staff is needed. However, having the court of record would provide a lot more options that you're about to hear for code, so that having the court, it depends on how you look at it, having the court of record opens up so many opportunities that could increase the caseload and have us need to evaluate resources if that makes sense.
And one other thing I'd like to add, if you recall on the slide I put up with all the additional options for expanding jurisdiction, all the ones that are required by ordinance. Those aren't things that they would just day one jump into, but they're tools for the future that they would work themselves into. Some tools I think they would take advantage of right away. And then some over time, they would learn all the aspects surrounding that. And then maybe, especially where our civil trials are, that would be something I think that we would step into. But I think we would, if this is something you're in favor of, we would suggest authorizing all of those additional jurisdictions within the ordinance, but just knowing that they're tools more for the future in those cases. So it wouldn't all happen on day one.
I would like to add that from a code perspective, I don't know that court of record is going to add that much immediately, as Bryn said, to what's going on. The real trigger for us, we already go there to get, as the judge mentioned, to get warrants for to look. And all we'd be doing was adding warrants to seize, to get trash off of property. And a warrant, while it is time consuming, it's not like we already take court cases there. It's not going to add to our court cases. It's going to add to that warrant count, which is not that.
It actually could reduce the court cases that
That's right.
code has to take, because right now what's happening in many cases, just because judge finds them guilty and, says pay a fine, that doesn't mean that the yard or the problem gets addressed. So if it's not addressed, then another case is filed, and then another case is filed, and then another case is filed. But the problem doesn't get remediated. So you could have, I think one of the examples Buford's about to give, there's like 12 cases, on the same problem. So with this, you could have one case and the problem solved or remediated, maybe not solved. There are some that would probably
Really, the bottom line.
solve
for-
is too
for
strong a
Buford-
word.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. The bottom line for Buford translates to making surrounding neighborhoods happier because nuisance things get solved presumably faster.
And that might be a great segue into some of these pictures that we could talk about.
A better segue would be taking a bathroom break.
Okay.
Pardon?
Let's take a break for a minute.
Oh.
You didn't want to listen to me?
Departmental reports so that we.
Yeah. If we skip it, maybe we can get back to it.
Recess, so I'm going to mute, we mute it? I think we can mute it.
Yes. Mr. Craig, if you would please, take us back on.
All right, I have one slide of the word and the rest are photographed. Or this isn't working.
The judge broke it.
There we go. So the initial question, and some of this has been discussed already, is just how exactly will court record health code compliant? Time in a couple of different ways. We only have to drive a couple of blocks to get a warrant or to go to court versus 20 miles over to the county. Also time in the sense that when you're dealing with the county courts or the district court, they set the docket and that docket is way out sometimes. So it may take months for us to get on their docket to go to trial. At this point, the municipal court does not have that issue. It takes a few weeks sometimes, but it's not forever and ever. And there is more local control over what we're doing. Accessibility is very similar. We can get in, we can get out. We know staff, we know who to talk to, we know the processes, and they know us. So if they have a question for us, as opposed to us showing up and then saying, no, you did something wrong, they can call us and they do and say, hey, what are you doing here? This is dumb, or please adjust this or whatever. They're actually very kind. Familiarity, we once again know the area. We're familiar with them. They're familiar with us. So there's a certain amount of trust that's built up just in a relationship. But also Tom is quick to point out that our staff here is familiar with our local and the judge with our local municipal codes. Y'all may not be aware of this. I know you are somewhat, but high grass code is different per city, or certainly could be. So some cities it's 9 inches like us. The state says 12 inches is the max. Cedar Park, I thought was 6 inches or something, may be wrong. So the judge and her staff knows what our local codes are. And it's aware of the process when we go to change these codes. There's no reason for the county to know what our codes are. So there's a whole training thing on that end if you have to go to the county or district court, where you have to actually explain what our local codes are. And when I say we, it's actually Kathy's staff that would probably be doing that. And then local control. While some of the judges out there, some friends of mine work out there, live right down the street, but not all of them do. They could be from Salado or Colleen or Heights or wherever. And local control means that the people who will be looking at these cases are people who live in this community. So they care. And not that district or county judges don't care, but they don't know. They don't drive by that North Katy encampment every day. They don't know it exists. So it doesn't reach that same level. And Tom, what was the other thing? You forgot to. Yeah. Okay. What I didn't do was introduce Chad. Y'all know Chad. Everybody knows Chad. And Tom Dickerson is our code manager. Very proud of Tom. He does all the heavy lifting for code, or his staff does. So we appreciate him being here. There was one other thing I was going to say, and I wrote it on that card this morning. Local control, local familiarity. This came up in both of the previous presentations, but as we take a case through court, it takes, and you all know this, y'all get angry with me sometimes because of it, but it takes a while to go to court. So we give people chances, we give them opportunities, our goal is compliance. And then when we feel like we've exhausted all other opportunities, we take them to court. Well, as Bren so wisely pointed out earlier, we send some of these cases 5, 10, 15 times, and they get charged. Sometimes it's graduated. They have a fine to pay, or they have to work it out in community service. Doesn't mean that they had cleaned it up. And this can get us the next step moving up. Once again, stays hyper-local. So there's a straight route to an actual cleanup. Take it up to fining and then jumping over to the county. So that means that we don't have to explain the entire case to the judge or her staff because they've already seen it. They've seen it come through the system and seen it gradually increase in profit. All right. So mention this one, North Katy at down street. So the biggest problem with this one, aside from there was illegal camping and illegal dumping. The problem was that it was several lots owned by several different people. So we could not identify who to take to court over this. And once again, if we did take somebody to court, all we could do is force them to pay a fine. This one right here ran from April to July of 22 for camping. And we started cases for illegal dumping in 2019. What a court of record would allow us to do would be get a warrant for removal. And we wouldn't have to mess around trying to find out who the owner is. We got a warrant, we're going on, we know who it says the owner is, and then we are legally allowed to go on that property to remove all this.
So we would remove it and take it essentially to the dump. So
We have, it depends on what the warrant says. I mean, they might be remove and hold for 90 days or remove and take to the dump. I would say in that picture on the left, we'd want to take it to the dump.
take it to the dumpster.
Yeah, right. But yes,
So the picture on the right,
yes, sir.
would you consider that a homeless encampment?
Yes, sir.
And if so, how does that then dovetail with all the homeless strategy that we're working on? And was it Martin versus Boise or?
But I don't want to overstep here because I am not as familiar with that as I'm sure Kathy and Brandon and others here are. But my understanding of it is that we need a bed to offer people.
Right.
We cannot tell them to leave unless there's a bed to offer them. So
This
once,
deals with the things, not the people.
yeah, I'm talking, yes.
Well, my understanding, and again, I'm not trying to, this is just where my mind's been lately. That is their home, right? It talks about a homeless person. If you don't have somewhere to put them, then wherever they are is their home.
But just like you couldn't have junk and debris in your home, in your front yard, because
Okay.
Yeah.
They
Doesn't
homeless
give you
man.
the right to violate.
Oftentimes it's residual, leftover and abandoned too, in those cases.
Yeah, I can see
And
that.
in this case, this is private property. This is not public property. You're not asking them to leave public property. It's owned by individuals.
But the individuals who own it are not physically there.
It was a mishmash. Some were, some weren't. It was horrible.
At the property owner.
Yeah, request.
If we can find the owner.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm almost stepped off into something I should have thought. I do it all. Brenda did it great. South Fourth Street. This is a tough one. The owner of this property passed away. It did not get, what's it called, probated. So the owner was still listed as the person who passed away. Squatters moved into this property. We had no way of getting on that property. We couldn't get an approval from the owner because they had passed away. We can't get, the squatters aren't going to get removed. And PD and us only have a certain amount of stuff we can ask people for, unless we catch them breaking the law where we can see them. We had no proof that they were squatting, but they were. We knew they were. But you can go ask them for an ID and they don't have to give it to you. It's very complicated. So what we could have done with this, obviously with junk and debris, is get a warrant to remove and go on this property and pull all the stuff out of there. Eventually PD did get the squatters removed, and then we were able to get the trash cleaned up. So that.
And you put a lien on the property?
No, we drug it out to the curb and asked solid waste to pick it up.
Okay.
But we could have.
What was your question?
Did we lean it?
Like whenever you go and mow it or something.
That is certainly going to be one of the tools we use moving forward, or that I'm going to suggest we use moving forward. West I, this is in between Third and First and Third.
The Blue House.
The Blue House. So just a few blocks from here. Come on, we'll know the Blue House. Very similar situation. We did have an owner in this case, but every time that we tried to send him to court, PD arrested him because of drug violations or something like that. So we could never, we caught the guy, but he was in jail, so we can't take him to even if we did take him to court, he had much bigger problems than paying a $200 fine or whatever in municipal court. He's in jail for whatever he did. Which I'll tell you all outside of here. The biggest issue here, aside from all this and the camping, was that tub, I think, was it that, are all these tubs, these yellow tubs here, those were full of hazardous chemicals.
Oh, my.
And it took us weeks and fire and PD dealing with this so we could finally enter in. I think I don't know. Anyway, we finally got it removed. A new owner bought it. They're fixing the house up. Happy ending, unlike many of the other endings we have with some of our stuff. But it just took so long. 20 court complaints ran for 3 years.
Oh.
We could have gone in there after the second or third time again.
Can I pause you just for a second? So when you think about time spent and you ask about staffing, but we're spending staff time on this. So
That's a good point.
And more community frustration.
the neighbors are unhappy.
Yes, very.
That's true. And this is dangerous. One of the points that I wanted to bring up when they were talking earlier also is we have changing demographics in the city of Temple. We have a lot of people coming in. It's not our home. It's different than when we graduated from high school or, since when a lot of us moved here originally. That means that some of the concerns of our citizenry have shifted. And one of the things we have noticed is that there's a lot more property concerns. So we get a lot more phone calls now about rental property not being up to code, about houses like this where, hey, I'm living here, they're charging me rent. It's substandard. So these property concerns are rising up. And that doesn't necessarily mean they weren't there before. It's just we couldn't see in this backyard until somebody told us something. So these issues are becoming more and more apparent. This is the last, there's two more cases I want to show you all, and then I can shut up. This woman lives on North 4th Street. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so I do not know. I cannot call her a hoarder because I think that is a thing. But it certainly looks like there's hoarding stuff going on here. She is an older woman. She's on a fixed income. She has been to court several times, 10 court complaints, started in 2019. The house next door burned down, and I'm convinced, although we have no proof, that it's because she had people living in her backyard and they were jumping back and forth over the fence, living in these sheds.
And she allowed them to live there?
Yeah. There's stuff going on there that we don't, there's a problem there, and we can't fix her. But she doesn't have money to clean this up. Even if we ordered her to clean it up, she can't clean it up. Honestly, while she might be very upset about it, would do her a favor if we took this and took it away. The shed burned. Oh, the shed burned as well. Yes, ma'am.
Other than if she's getting income from illegal people living in the shed.
Right, but they're not there anymore. We got rid of them.
You got rid of them.
Got rid of her income.
That's right. And now she can't even clean up. And then finally, in Mac, I think, weren't you involved in this 10 years ago when we cleaned up all those tires?
My project.
Okay, so we dealt with this.
Nothing compared to what it was.
It's not as bad. We dealt with this property on North 13th years and years ago, and it's since changed ownership, but all these tires that y'all are seeing right here were on the inside of that building. And we knew they were in there, but we couldn't talk the county or district or whoever court into letting us get in that building. But we could see them, but they wouldn't let us inside the building. So when this guy bought the building, he immediately started dragging all these tires outside the building because he wanted to use the building. If we could have dealt with this 10 years ago, this would not be an issue today. So we get some finalization. And that's part of that relationship I was talking about with court, is if we have a relationship, we can go to court and explain. And the judge knows and her staff knows that Mac's not just telling a story, and we're not telling it, because we're consistent in what we do and the way we do it. And we've raised up these problems from trying to work with them, giving them tools, getting frustrated, sending them to court and finding them. And finally now we need to get in that building and get rid of these tires. They're still there. I have other examples, but I
Yeah, but
can,
they're not in the building now.
I don't know what's in that building. I bet there are some.
Well, but you still can't get rid of them even though they're out of the building? They're now visible?
No, I can't enter a property without a warrant.
Oh, right, obviously.
And see, that's following up with water and.
Yes. Right, of course.
Snakes, boy, there was a ton of snakes when we moved.
Yeah, it was scary. The tires at the, whatever, 10 to 8 years ago, whatever, were so tall. They were like 30, how much? 30 feet. 30 feet in the air. They were insane.
They threw them. You know how we got them up? We climbed up there and threw them down.
That's right.
Physical training.
I mean, Mayor and Brent, I am basically done.
Okay.
I have some more examples if y'all want to see them, but I think y'all get my point. Just be beating a dead horse.
So council, what we're looking for today is some direction on whether this is something that you would like us to pursue. Again, the staff recommendation is that this would help add additional processes and tools. Again, it's specifically for code compliance, but in a broader sense of public safety. We do need to bring back an ordinance for your consideration. So we're just kind of looking for some direction, some general direction today, if that's something that you'd like to see in the future agenda.
Done. 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 Agreed.
Thank you.
All you gotta do is ask.
Right? Yeah, your presentation was good, but I mean, the pictures don't look.
The pictures sell it.
Cemented the deal.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I know that that's been a long time coming. Thank you for your work on that. So judge and view for just everyone.
And Max, thank you.
Thank you all for listening. I didn't do anything on this.
Well, we saw the picture of the.
I was part of the tire project. That was a disaster.
All right, very good. Next item, we're gonna skip item 3, for the sake of time, and move on to item 4, which is to receive a presentation regarding the proposed planning process for the 2025 strategic plan. Ms. Meyer.
Thank you. I'll just give a brief opening comment and then turn it over to Christine Liao, who has prepared a presentation for you today. So we are, believe it or not, coming up on the 5-year anniversary of our strategic plan. And staff feels like it is time to do a more extensive update to the plan. Of course, we do incremental updates as we go each year in our business and budget planning process. And we also feel like a more extensive community outreach and input element would be helpful to us as we move forward. So Christine has put together a suggested program, and I've asked her to share that with you today. We are looking for direction from you all, whether you agree that it's time to engage in a more extensive update to our plan, and agree that having more community input in the front end of that planning would be useful and appropriate. And if so, if this plan, if what we're proposing this today is something that you could support. So with that, Christine.
Yes, okay, so Greg kind of covered my roadmap.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's just the concept that we're proposing to move forward with. So I think this council was largely the council of the last, the 2020 process. So it really does look a lot like that. The biggest difference, again, is we're looking to put a more robust community input process. So that's the biggest difference, is starting with that community and organizational priorities that we plan to gather through a working group, which will inform the leadership as they develop those strategic goals and strategies to achieve those goals. Then staff that'll work on the tactics and initiatives to achieve the goals. And that is the process to lead to our strategic plan. So the working group, Brent gave me credit, but I'll tell you, I proposed a small working group, and Brent said, well, if one working group is good, 4 is better. So, so she had a large part in the visioning of this too. So what we're envisioning for the charge is that the charge of this group to engage the residents and stakeholder groups to ascertain their priorities for the 5 years for the Temple community. And they're also charged with communicating those priorities to city leaders.
Who are the stakeholder groups?
So that's what we'll be looking for the
Okay.
working group to define, but
Okay,
we've, you
good.
know,
You're coming back to it, I'm
I
sorry.
will, yes, absolutely. So what we're proposing for the organization of it is that we've got one large strategic planning work group, but they'll be working in subgroups that are based on our focus areas. So we'll have a subgroup on our high performing organization, communication, collaboration, places and spaces, public safety, and smart growth. So specifically what that looks like is, for instance, the communication, collaboration, high performing organization, sub-working group, you know, while we're looking for them to make a recommendation for anything that they want to see in their priorities for the city, we're asking them to specifically look at things that are related to innovation, continuous improvement, red tape reduction, customer service, technology, and it goes on and on. So everything that we have, you know, over the last 5 years defined as high performing organization and communication collaboration. And the idea is that this subgroup will be composed of 9+ members. And as you'll see, all the groups are really a mix. So we've got some, you know, department staff representation. We also have some, you know, specific community members selected at large. And then looking to bring in, okay, so not on this one, but the other ones are boards and commissions, bringing in members from the boards and commissions. So this is a real mixed group with lots of experience in different areas. So,
Christine, if I could
Yeah.
add here, because this one is mostly internal, like internal processes, there's not really a city council appointed board or commission that closely aligns with this one. So, but I do have several advisory groups that have community members that help me kind of guide through our internal programs and processes. So that's why you see some city manager appointments as recommended on this one, just because this one is very kind of internally focused. The ones that Christine's going to go over, the other three have many boards and commissions that align with those. So they have a bigger focus on bringing in some of our board members. And that's just why those are a little bit different.
And so it's reflected on our places and spaces subgroup. So again, looking for all recommendations, but specifically in terms of places and spaces, parks, recreation, tourism, downtown, historic preservation, library, environment, neighborhoods. And then again, we're bringing in folks from our existing boards. I won't read them all to you, some at-large members, and then again, from our related city departments in, you know, Parks and Recs, library, housing, communications, planning, transport, people.
We're talking about probably one person from each of those. So if you'll go back to the places, or that one's fine. So you're looking at maybe 13 members total.
Yes.
So not like two people from each one and you end up having a 30-person subgroup.
No.
So keeping it pretty tight.
Yes.
That's our recommendation, is you would pull one member from each of those boards and one key staff person from each of those departments. In most cases, it would be the department head. In a few cases, we might recommend someone, with a subject matter expert, but in most cases, it would be the department head, as is our staff recommendation to you all.
So again, for this one, looking at police, fire, code enforcement, emergency management, disaster preparedness and response, courts, neighborhoods, and of course, the related advisory commissions and boards, about 5 at-large members, and our specific departments, police, fire, and Transport Temple. And then for our smart growth, everything infrastructure, facilities, mobility, water, wastewater, solid waste, economic development, growth, management, planning, airport land use, all of these things. And we've got actually a lot of special groups that we can pull people from, a couple at-large members, and then 3 of our departments that are primarily in this focus area. So yeah, so we're looking at about 13 people for each group. So together, a fairly large working group, but again, they'll be working in their subgroups to come up with these recommendations to you about what is the community saying the priorities are. So the expectations of this working group, so there'll be a small staff team for performance excellence and communications team. We'll be working to assist the working groups to make sure that it's a fruitful endeavor. So we'll be helping them develop a survey tool that will circulate at all the events, workshops, focus groups on our website, all over to get as much input as we can, broadly speaking. Then the working groups will actually work to develop that list of community stakeholders, focus groups, any kind of community events that they want to do. And this is really just to say, did you know that the city's undergoing a strategic planning process and you can participate? This is how, come to a town hall meeting, come to a focus group, whether that's setting up a booth at First Friday in October, because everyone loves Oktoberfest and it is the highest attended First Friday. So lots of different ways to make sure people know that this planning process is going on. So then staff will actually work to schedule all those events. They'll develop a communication strategy, make sure the public knows that this is going on. We'll organize those events, and then all of us together will go to anything that's planned, all the focus groups. Not everyone will go to all the focus groups, but joint together, staff and working groups will go to these planned events, town halls, and community events. So after that, after the engagement process, we'll close out the survey, and then performance excellence staff will analyze that survey responses and provide a report. And then the working group will take all of that together, everything they've heard in the focus groups, everything they've heard in town halls, and put together, identify the overarching themes, the overarching priorities, the main priorities that they've heard. And then they'll compose their 5-year priorities and they'll present that to you all for your consideration. So for the deliverable, what we're actually asking them to produce is going to be something kind of like this, is that we expect from each focus group to get anywhere from 8 to 15 priority areas. And this is kind of what we're looking for, is what is the priority? What is the vision statement around that priority? How would they describe it? What all does it encompass? And then in the next area, we're really looking for them to provide you some specific feedback. Specifically, what did you hear people thought was a success in this priority? What did you hear people say is a shortcoming in this priority area? And anything that they think should be done or changed. And then we've got an idea bag. So if this is not a charge to do these things, it's really a clarification about, what did they mean when they say communication, better outreach? Well, what they mean is maybe a city newsletter or an annual state of the city address from the mayor or city manager. It's just to help provide some clarification about what all the feedback is. So that is what we're actually looking for them to produce. So as far as the timeline of the working groups activities, we're expecting them to go from this July to about next February. So there'll be an orientation process about how the strategic planning process is going to work, what their charge is. Then they'll do some planning work to identify those stakeholder groups. Then we'll actually go into the engagement and data gathering. So holding those events, gathering all that data. They'll get survey response results and have a facilitated meeting where they work together to identify the priorities, and then they'll actually compose it and present it to City Council.
So the makeup of the people for each group would be would be set up by July.
Yes. So it might help. So we'll keep going. Yeah, you'll just click on.
Sorry. It went rogue on me.
Yeah. We'll get there. Keep going. One more.
All right.
Okay. So we'll go to the leadership. So we're here presenting our proposal to you. And so we're actually, one of our questions to you is how to go about selecting. If y'all have a preference, we have a recommendation, but if you have a preference, and then hoping to select those folks by June so that, again, they can start their work in July. It's kind of the proposal. And then, again, we'll be looking for the leadership strategic planning retreat in March, so a little less than a year from now, where you'll actually hear the feedback and the working groups will present to you what they've identified as the community and organization priorities.
And that timeline is important because that's the timeline then that would feed into that year's business planning and budgeting planning. So we need it in the kind of the early spring so that those inputs and feedback from the community help inform our update, our major update to the strategic plan and our new business plan and budget.
So we go to professional services. So one of the perhaps biggest expenses of what we're proposing will be is a professional facilitator. And this was, what we talked about of the expectations between the staff and the working group. And the stars indicate where we're looking for professional facilitation services. So at the very beginning, working with the working group to identify those stakeholder groups. So hoping the goal with the facilitator is to ensure to help facilitate the discussion process so we don't leave any important focus community stakeholders out. So whether that is, the youth or young professionals perspective or the education, every kind of focus group, a stakeholder you could imagine, we're looking for them to identify that.
Seniors, the business community, the development community, just making sure that we have everyone having an opportunity to provide input and appropriate ways to gather that input.
So
Where
then
do you
we'll
find a facilitator like that?
Well, we could do a request for proposals. We just had a meeting with a facilitator actually that lives in our community. That might be, an option that we consider. I think we have Deborah. Yeah. So, there may be some local options or, there are people who do the facilitation, professionally. Okay.
So we'll also be looking for the facilitator to actually facilitate the town halls. So the plan right now, the goal is to do one town hall in each council district and have a facilitator there to facilitate the conversation, to make sure it stays on track and that people leave there feeling like it was a good experience and they were heard and they've got input into the future of the community. And then finally, we'll be looking for them to, after the working group gets all the inputs, we want them to be able to sit with the facilitator and as a group be able to distill what were the primary priorities that we heard. And then they can go into, once they as a group identify what they think the main priorities for their focus area are, they'll be able to compose the actual deliverable for you all to, because you don't want to read 1,000 surveys. You don't want to listen to a bunch of transcripts from these focus groups in town hall. So really that's the service that this working group is providing, is they're gathering all of that qualitative information and delivering it to you in a way that is digestible and will help you as you go to identify the goals. And so, I've already kind of gone over the staff. So the performance excellence team and the communications team will mainly be the main folks driving this forward and keeping everything on time. So we have questions now. So I think I'll be happy to answer any questions about if there's about actual proposal, but what we're looking for again is this the right time for this process? And is this the right process? And if it is, do you have thoughts about how you'd like to select the working group members if you like that idea?
One thing that I see, Jessica asked about how you go about finding a facilitator. Just in the process of, because of campaigning, going around and talking to more people than one does on a global basis. I think the facilitator, if it's a good facilitator, will really help keeping these town halls focused so that they're not just a complaint fest.
Yes, ma'am.
Really important, because the complaint fest is not, it's not really where it's not gonna find out the things that are gonna be most helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I think the facilitator is an important component of this.
Very.
For ensuring that the engagement sessions are productive,
Yes.
that everybody has a chance to participate, because you have people who are not shy and are happy to share, and a really good facilitator helps pull out from people who may be a little bit more reserved, and really get an opportunity to hear not just the loudest members, but a more a truer understanding of the holistic feedback that you might receive. And then I think the facilitator also helps in that, as other than the staff members who we are recommending being on the working groups, the community members, our board members, and other members you might decide to appoint, of course, are volunteers, much like yourselves. So the facilitator and staff can also help distill, just as the working groups would distill information to you, we can also help, kind of organize that in a way. So I think we would also be looking for the facilitator to ultimately provide a report to the working group of all of the feedback that was received from the various engagement opportunities. Here's kind of a summary of that so that they can then, in their working group, take that feedback and decide what's most important to present to you all. So I do agree that the facilitation portion of this is very important.
Quite an undertaking.
Yeah,
It
huge,
really
yeah.
sounds like a lot of work.
I like your outline, the process. And I think engaging the community is really important.
Yeah. We hear a lot online, that people feel like they haven't been heard. It's a real opportunity for them to get a chance to speak their mind. And, but like you said, it's a fine line between, doing something proactive and then someone just complaining. So I think that facilitates.
Some complaints are worthwhile, but
Sure.
just these groups could turn into complaint fest.
Yeah.
In terms of taking board members on already existing boards and getting them involved with this, that I have found as we have, as the council has been attached to different boards and we spend more time with them, is that some people, some community members on the boards don't feel like they're really doing a lot. And because there's not a lot for them to do. This will give them more to do, but does that water down the boards and commissions to a degree?
I think really the opposite. One of the concerns that I have about the process, or, concerns may be too strong, but the strategic plan really does drive the work we do as an organization. So it drives where we spend our money and the work that, I and then, the department heads assign out to our people. And because the boards didn't have a formal part in our last process, I think there can sometimes be they didn't have an opportunity to come to the table and say, this is what we think should be worked on. So I think this will help bring that element. So we move forward with a shared vision of what is important to our community and for our organization to work on. And so you'll have the staff who does this for a living, or, our professional perspective, community members who you feel appropriate for each focus group that, we tried to outline a suggestion that would get members that would have both meaningful and relevant input, but also even some fresh and perspective and new ideas. And then also some members who are currently serving on the boards, again, so that when we hopefully, if you all agree, present a strategic plan for adoption for fiscal year 2025, it's a largely shared, you're never gonna have everything perfect, but everyone's had an opportunity for their input. So it should help us create a shared vision between the community, our boards and commissions, your professional staff team, and then ultimately you all deciding that, yes, this is the direction for the next 5 years, and then we, working on implementing that. So I think I view it as helpful for our board and commission process because it provides a formalized way for them to influence the work plans and the direction so that there's not the disconnect of, well, we're working on this because this is what's in this council strategic plan. This is what the council has said, go do. And I think we should be doing this. We'll have those things married. Or at least you had a chance to advocate for that, and it either made it on the list or, it didn't. It didn't.
Right.
Sounds like a good plan to me. And good timing.
It's an enormous undertaking. Just, it's kind of mind boggling. You guys don't look mind boggling.
These ladies have got.
To be fair, we have been talking about this, and working on this together. We recognize that this is a lot of information, and it is a big undertaking, but I think it is important. Or we wouldn't have brought it forward to you all, but we also want to make sure you think it's important and worthwhile.
How much might we pay a facilitator? Maybe that's an immaterial question at this point, because money bags will find it in the bottom of the bag.
I think we're doing a lot of, we're unlike where, we might contract most of the work out, for a master plan. We're doing, I feel like we have the capacity to take a lot of it on within existing internal staff. And it's really that professional facilitation part that we need. So, I think at this moment, without having, tested the market of what the cost would be, generally speaking, we're thinking around a $35,000 budget for the first part of the process, and then maybe some additional next fiscal year as well as we round out the planning part. So I hope that's not an exact
No,
science, but just to give it an idea.
I'm in. What you're looking for. You put our hands down or something.
Just the process is, it does sound like a large lift, but whatever you would like us to do, we will make it happen. Just that you're comfortable with the process and you're comfortable with the working group and the way we select the working group members.
Another thing a facilitator will be good at, I'm just kind of trying to think rapidly, new thoughts here, is just, as an example, right now in parks master plan, they know where they're going. It's on something that came up today, looking at the budget, the new pickleball courts. Mm-hmm. Well, that's already a contention in the community because the tennis people want no pickleball courts and more tennis. And it's
pickleball people off their tennis courts.
Exactly. Well, exactly. But the land for the pickleball courts, the tennis people want instead of putting pickleball courts there. What I'm saying is it's gonna raise questions to that level that have been dealt with for some time by staff internally. That these working groups will think are new things they're starting.
Well, so we do have the staff, so potentially, Chuck or Kevin would be on the staff to advise the working groups.
And kind of calm down, say that this is
Yeah.
already, okay.
So the idea is that the working groups themselves, anytime you do a public engagement thing, there's always some noise in it, always some noise. And so this group will also be filtering out some of that. And like I said, really distilling it down to, we actually heard this a lot across many different groups.
Good. I see.
So, and again, you will have some staff on all of these groups to say, yes, that's been a this, it's currently being dealt with in this way. And so the group will be determining, again, what they think needs to be, after all they've heard, their own professional experience and stuff, what should go in their recommendation to you.
That would be, our expectation is that they would use their judgment. So you would be appointing, again, people you've already appointed to a board or commission that you felt like, you feel that they're appropriate to advise you, so they're in that field or interested in that, and a community leader, your staff team, your appropriate staff team members, maybe some other community members that have an interest in that focus area, but people that you trust and take advice from, and they will use their judgment between absolutely every comment that was made in a public forum. They are not required to or even, I don't think that the process desires them to advance everything unfiltered, but to take what they hear,
Of course.
sort what is important, what may be a recurring theme, or what from their professional background they feel like is something that needs to be moved forward. But it does, so it doesn't mean that everything that's said in an engagement session moves forward, but it does mean everybody gets a chance to be heard. And that taken into consideration and taken seriously doesn't mean it's going to get in the strategic plan, though.
Yeah, good way to say it. Thank you.
Show a timeline. I stepped out for a minute. You did? Okay, all right.
So this is everybody together, from staff to the working group, and city council. Of course, there's lots of work going on, but these are the primary decision points at that point will be. Is there anything specific you were?
No, it just, like everyone has said, it's a heavy lift, lots of moving parts, lots of people. And, I acknowledge, I guess my concerns are what everyone else's concerns are, in that, you get lots of voices, and some of them are more helpful than others. And, we separating the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. What's really something that matters and that can be acted on. That's what we're looking for. Which to me is then finding those, almost like a needle in the haystack, the things that matter and can be acted upon that is new to this group. Right? And that might be the perfect reason to do it, is to have another set of eyes on it, so to speak. Maybe we're too close. Sometimes staff is too close. So.
Well, and like Christine said, you'll have two different feedback opportunities, because we'll have the survey. So we'll be sending that out and getting, hopefully getting lots of citizen feedback from the survey. And then we'll have those town halls and things like that. So, if you end up with a town hall that is, doesn't go quite the way we wanted to, it's not the only way that we're getting feedback.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very.
I also want to make clear, because this was really important to me in the way that we structured this, was that, and some communities choose to do it a different way. where the working group actually drafts the strategic plan and submits it to the council for consideration. It's, to me, it's important to the city council to retain ownership of the strategic plan. So what you're asking the working groups to do under our proposal is to provide you an input. But then you still have from that point forward, we go through the same process we went through last time. And in addition to things you already know about, things that you've heard from your constituents, things that are important to you, you'll have another set of input from this working group. But this working group's not creating the strategic plan. They're just providing you with the inputs from their work. That makes sense. And I think, assuming that we are okay to continue moving forward, the other question that I needed answered is kind of how do you want to go about appointing the working group members? Do you want staff to bring you back a recommendation? Do we want to set up a time where we go through, the list of your existing board and commission members and you all kind of work through that? Do you want an open application process? How do we want to handle that part?
What if you took it to, I know staff, but as far as the getting board members on there, what if you took it to the boards and asked them to appoint someone? That way, at least everyone had a voice in appointing their representative. And I don't, at any point in any of those 4 working groups, would there be, will there be like a parks person, for example, on 2 or 3 of them? I don't mean the same person necessarily, but.
Well, I think we had definitely a parks person on the places and spaces.
Sure, but I don't mean, but will like somebody from library advisory board be on another?
No.
At no time will there be more than one person on any board that's involved in any of the 4.
Right.
Correct?
It would all be
It's not gonna be overlap.
right. Or that's our recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, I think it makes sense to have each board appoint someone.
I did also have a thought on that in that, as y'all are all saying, it's a big time, it's a lot, it's a big time commitment. And nothing is stronger than the heart of a volunteer. So maybe we're looking for, maybe instead of asking the board to appoint someone, is looking for volunteers from the boards, unless you had someone specific. And that we're asking them a lot, not only the board meetings they go to, also they'll be going to these strategic planning meetings, also a few of the public engagement events. So it is a lot that we are asking.
We need to make sure in that sense.
And that they know the
That they
commitment,
understand
yeah.
exactly that it's not presented at board meeting A and board meeting at that same time, recommendations are put in or volunteers are taken. People need.
We would want them to know what they're getting
understand
themselves into.
and
Yeah.
And be committed to making to volunteering to do it.
Makes no difference to me.
As long as they know what their responsibility will be and then they can, among themselves, they'll either volunteer or they'll ask for. But I think, good point. Let them decide.
Like I said, unless you had specific, that's fine.
I think there's some boards when this is presented, they're gonna kind of be like us and be shell shocked at first. Need to digest it a little bit.
You cut it way down. You cut this presentation way down to the board. So we're looking for one person from this board to work with the places and spaces. And this will be your charge.
And this is the purpose of your volunteerism, and this is the end product we want to reach, and this is the timeline, and these are the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They've got to understand that.
Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Yeah, congratulations on
Yes, good job.
a lot of work.
Congratulations on
Congratulations on your hard work.
overloading yourself.
Yeah, yes,
All right, if there's nothing else, then I will end this workshop for the Temple City Council. It is currently 10 minutes until 5. We'll see you all downstairs shortly.